If you're not aware of the book Test-Driven Development by Kent Beck, I encourage you to look it up and ask your teams about it. But let's look at the various types of tests just kind of applied across a Kanban board. And this is what a work tracking board generally looks like. We define the workstations across the top, or the stages, the statuses across the top. And of course, before the development column where the code is written, you have four key decisions. The conceptual definition is requirements. It's what are we trying to build? What's our objectives? And the next one, user experience design. It makes the design decisions about how it should look. Should I click a button? What should the behavior of the software be for this particular feature? After we define that, technical design is deciding whatever architectural elements need to be added, what design patterns, what libraries, in general, how are we going to implement this, and then decompose the feature into development tasks. Next is test design, where we decide what scope is in, what scope is out, how many scenarios is there a happy path through this new software feature? Are there some exception paths? But essentially, how many scenarios do we actually need to fully test this feature? Is it 2 scenarios, 3 scenarios, 4 scenarios? So this is the agile implementation of the old concept of a test plan, but it's very, very lightweight. It's just a set of bullet lists describing, what scenario we should run the software through to make sure that the feature has all the behaviors it needs. And if you think about it, if you think about the test first approach espoused by test-driven development, if I'm going to just test the software manually, well, think about when I'm going to decide how the software should behave. I'm going to decide that in enough detail, probably starting in user experience design for a manual test. I'm deciding that there should be a button. I'm deciding that I should have to type something in a text box. I'm deciding that when I hit the button, if the text box is empty, that I have some type of validation error. Okay. And then some activities happen. And then once that new build is deployed to a manual test environment, well, then I can use my eyeballs and manually do the asserts or manually validate that this test, this requirement is satisfied. Okay. So the creation of tests is a design activity. In user experience design, I'm making design decisions, and then some activities happen, the software is built, that feature is built, and then I can make sure that that design was fulfilled properly. And so you come down in scope to a full system test or an end-to-end acceptance test. Before the code is written, I would decide that maybe for a login page, if they type the right username and password and hit the button, that it validates and forwards to some other screen of the system. That's one path through. The other path is wrong password. I should see a validation error. That's a second test. The third test is 3 wrong passwords in a row. Maybe I lock their account if that's a requirement. Well, that's a third test scenario. So I've made design decisions in the identification of 3 full system tests. Then of course the code has to be written, and then the code is actually the C# code and Selenium code perhaps is written for the automated full system test, and then the test is run, and then the assert statements can run, the validation, and then if the tests are green, we're good. Otherwise, we keep on working until the tests are green. So for full system tests, you can see that deciding what the test is a design activity. And then you do some implementation, and then running the test is your quality control activity. And so when you choose to use automated tests versus manual tests, you get the quality control activity for free the second run and third run and fourth run. And now every build, you just run these again, and you're doing quality control in that area over and over and over again. But the deciding what the test should be, that the test should exist, and what the steps of the test are, that's a design activity. Okay. But that strategically, it's not interesting to me to get into the developer debates about red, green refactor and specifically, what line of code happens before another line of code. I'm talking strategy. Strategically deciding that some behavior should be there and what that behavior should be for that area of the software, that's a design activity. That's That's determining that a test should exist and what the test should be running and checking for. And then, of course, you write some code and then running the test in your continuous integration. That's your quality control activity that just runs every test that has been built. And so for unit tests, for component level integration tests, within the development team, that space, that time space between the design of the test and the first running of the test, well, that's very small because that's all on the developer's workstation. But but if this test driven strategy is not already in place in your team, then that would be a missing something missing that you should ask about.